Hi, unicorns. I really do miss you guys. I wish that we were all in school right now, but that's okay. We can still have lessons and we can still talk. So today's lesson is about ADHD. So let's get started. So let's learn about ADHD. So what does ADHD stand for? So the A stands for attention, which is the ability to focus or pay attention. D is for deficit. So that's less or lack of. H is for hyperactive, and hyper means more, and active means energy or movement. And D is for disorder. And in the medical field, that's just something we use for when something's different than what the baseline is, different from the majority. So if we all put it all together, ADHD, which is the attention deficit hyperactive disorder, is less of an ability to focus and more energy and movement. So what does ADHD look like? So ADHD affects 6 key executive functions of the brain. So that means it affects 6 certain things that your brain does, which is activation. That means starting things, being able to look at a project and say, I'm going to start this. Sometimes your brain can have a hard time with that. Focus, effort, emotion, memory, and action. So for the attention deficit, so the trouble paying attention, sometimes that'll look like a difficulty with focusing, concentrating, staying on task. Someone with ADHD may be easily distracted. They may daydream a lot. They may forget things easily. The hyperactivity may look like fidgeting or tapping fingers or tapping feet or wiggling. It might look like blurting out answers. Maybe the teacher asks a question and the answer comes out before they even finish the question. It might even look like interrupting. Sometimes it'll look like talking fast or having a hard time sitting still. ADHD can also affect your emotions. Sometimes people with ADHD have very strong reactions to things. It can also affect our impulse control. So that means a person with ADHD may have a thought and they might think to do something, but before they can think out the consequences of that action, they've already done it. So sometimes things may happen or things may be done before they're completely thought out. So let's look at 2 people. We have Bob on the right and Tom on the left. So Bob and Tom are assigned a project by their teacher. So they both sit down to start the project. Bob starts his project and he focuses completely on his project. He starts it and that's all he's going to think about, and he's going to work on that project until he finishes it. Tom also starts the project. He's really excited and he wants to do well. But while he's working on that project, he suddenly remembers that he forgot to get his reading log signed. And when he starts to think about his reading log, he remembers that he has 4 pages of homework tonight. So he's trying to think about which one he's going to do first because he wants to get organized. And then when he thinks about that, he remembers he's supposed to be working on his project, and he looks up at the clock and he realizes he doesn't have very much time left. But then he's looking at the clock and he's thinking that he's really hungry and lunch is in about 15 minutes. And once he starts thinking about lunch and his ham and cheese sandwich, he remembers that recess is after, and he starts to think about who he wants to play with. And then he realizes he needs to get back to his project. So both Bob and Tom started off focusing on their project. They both want to do well. And Tom, for the majority of what he was thinking about, it was all school related. Tom still really wants to do well, but it was hard to focus on one thing. And all those different thoughts and all of those different needs can be overwhelming. And sometimes that's what ADHD looks like. So what causes ADHD? There's been a lot of research and studies done, but scientists and doctors don't have a for sure answer yet. They know that genetics can play a part. That means that if someone has ADHD, it's likely that someone else in their family has ADHD. But other than that, they don't have a lot of sure things or sure answers. ADHD is not caused by eating too much sugar or too much TV or screen time. However, if someone has ADHD, those things can increase or decrease a person's symptoms, but it's different for everybody. So let's talk about ADHD and the brain. I think this part is the most interesting. So in our brain, we have highways. And on those highways, information travels. So the highways, we call them neurons. So if you see, there's a neuron here and a neuron here. And so the way that our thoughts and our actions travel, they have to go from one neuron to the next. Okay? So you will notice, though, that there's a space between the neurons. So one neuron sends a message to the other neuron with what are called neurotransmitters. And neurotransmitters are chemicals in our brain. So let's say you have a thought to do your homework. So the thought starts up in here in your brain and it goes down this neuron and it's going to the next neuron. And so this neuron spits out a bunch of neurotransmitters. And remember, the neurotransmitters are essential to send that thought to the next neuron. So it spits out those neurotransmitters and it also has a little vacuum to suck up the extra when it's done. But for people with ADHD, that vacuum might be too efficient. It might work too well, and it starts to suck up all those neurotransmitters before they can even get to the next neuron. So that thought can't finish. So the neuron spits out those neurotransmitters, but the vacuum's too fast. It sucks them up before they can even attach and send to the next neuron. So that's what scientists think may be going on with ADHD. There's still a lot of research. So sometimes what they think are just theories. So we don't know for sure. They also think that sometimes people with ADHD may not have enough of neurotransmitters. And that may be the problem too. But a person with ADHD can definitely be smart, be successful, have good grades, and do great things. ADHD doesn't mean a person cannot be successful. It just may mean they need different strategies and tools. So let's talk about some tools and methods for success for a person who has ADHD. Sometimes it can be hard to concentrate for a long time. So portion your work. Try to break your work into smaller parts. If a whole worksheet of 20 problems is overwhelming, separate it into parts. Take a pencil and draw it into fourths. Do 5 questions at a time. Take breaks. Set goals for yourself. If it's too long to work for an hour, work for 30 minutes and take a break. Or like I said earlier, separate your problems. Work through 5 problems or 10 problems and then give yourself a 5-minute brain break. Try to avoid distraction. Try to do work in areas with less distractions. Don't work right next to the window where you're going to watch your little brother play. Try not to do your homework in front of the TV or while you're trying to game. Try to set yourself up an area where you can just focus on your work. Use organization tools. It may be hard for a person's brain to focus and organize all by itself, and that's okay. So you have to give your brain tools to help it succeed. So use organization tools. Those might look like a homework planner. It might look like a to-do list. It might look like a schedule. You might even have a checklist by your door reminding you of things to put in your backpack before you go to school. And you know what? I'm going to let you in on a secret. Teachers and adults use these all the time. Our brains need help. Our brains need tools, and it's a good idea to help you be successful. So let's see. Let's look at some of these different organization tools. So here's a homework planner. And I'm going to attach a homework planner to the end of this lesson so you guys can go use it if you want to. Print it out and use it. Here's an example of a backpack checklist before you go to school so you can remember your homework, your lunch money, your library books, forms for your teacher. You might have a to-do list. Maybe in the morning you say, okay, I need to do my homework. I need to take the litter box out. I need to feed the dog, things like that. And look, sometimes it can just be as simple as putting names on your folders, and it doesn't have to be fancy. These are really artistic, but it's okay if you just put the names on there. That's okay too. So another thing to help you is set a schedule. Our brains like routine, and it'll help your brain know when it's time to be learning and focusing if you do the same thing at the same time every day. Communication. So remember I said sometimes people with ADHD may have extreme emotions. They may become easily frustrated. So an important thing to remember is to try and communicate. If you feel yourself getting frustrated or if you're feeling overwhelmed, try to use your words before those emotions turn into actions. If you're looking at your homework and you think, I can't do this, tell an adult. That's what we're here for. Tell your parents, tell a teacher, tell any trusted adult. Say, I'm overwhelmed and I don't know what to do next. And we're going to help you. That's what we're here for. So the key is to try and communicate before things get too bad, before those emotions turn into actions. Just ask for help. Some people with ADHD use medication, and the medication does different things. There's different medications that help the brain in different ways. If you remember those neurotransmitters that we were talking about, some medications help slow down that vacuum so that there is more time for the neurotransmitters to go to the next neuron. Um, some medications increase the amount of neurotransmitters in the brain, and some medications do different things. Not everybody with ADHD takes medication, but a lot do. But remember, only take medication if your doctor prescribes it and you have a parent's permission. So, approximately 1 out of 10 children in the US have an ADHD diagnosis. That means there's 6.1 million children who have been diagnosed with ADHD. So, if you have ADHD, you are not alone. You're part of a big old group. All right, guys. So that was our lesson on ADHD. If you have any lessons or any questions, of course, feel free to reach out and tell me. If you have any ideas for our next lessons, feel free to put them in the little Google form that is on the end of this lesson as well. All right, guys. I hope you're taking care, and I miss you lots. Bye, unicorns.